Hello, good people, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History. Signed, sealed, remembered, Larry Leaves. We're at the very end of the clam bake production. Elvis is going to finish up filming on this movie, and then he's going to move on to the rest of his life. Hi, Gun. Hi, Keith. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. We're going to start off with a song because we're getting closer and closer to getting back onto the Circle G. So we're going to play Circle G Dreams.
I drew a line in the dirt, said this land could be yours. 1 acre each, a house, a porch, a door. I saw the light in their eyes, like stars in the dust. But the paper stayed blank, and the dream gathered rust. I wasn't cash poor, I was rich in belief, trying to carve out a kingdom beneath cotton clouds and the Mississippi sun. But every time I reached, the dream came undone. Don't you forget what I tried to make, a home for the hearts I refused to forsake. They called it a whim, they called it a waste, but I saw a commune, not just empty space. Don't you forget me when the fences arise, when the ranch house fades and the silence lies. I gave you the downbeat, I gave you the land, but the kingdom never built still lives in my hand. They said they said legal red tape, but I saw a chapel in every landscape, a replica of Graceland, a circle of trust. But the curl was bust, and the dream turned to dust. I signed the checks, I made the calls, watched the trailers roll in like prayer storms. But Vernon's face, tight as a gate, held back the flood of what I tried to create. Don't you forget what I tried to give, a place where my people could finally live. They called it a farm, they called it a phase, but I saw a future in the ranch's haze. Don't you forget me when the lights go out, when the house plans fade and the voices doubt. I gave you the downbeat, I gave you the land, but the kingdom never built still lives in my home. Still lives in my hand. Still lives in my hand.
Thank you all for gathering here at Hillbilly Cat History, where we remember together and listen for the echoes. And today, we're going to hear the echoes of Larry leaving. Hi, Anna. Hi, Gunn. Hi, Marion. Hi, Keith. Hi, Linda Jewell. Thank you all for being here. Greatly appreciate it. And Keith says that he misses the Circle G Ranch and he's still trying to win the lottery to live the dream. Well, you better hurry, Keith, because apparently the Circle G Ranch has been put onto some group, some Mississippi preservation groups nomination list, and it looks like it's in the running to receive funds, I think, for refurbishment. And Donna Presley put out a short about it the other day. So I'm not really sure what's going on, but you could check her channel to see her update, and hopefully she's going to tell us about any more good news that comes along. And Keith says, can you imagine being Elvis every day on the set of Clambake, going back home and dealing with Scylla and the Colonel? Well, here's something that you might find interesting. The myth is, of course, that Elvis was pressured to marry Priscilla. And many people that are here today may believe that. And I'm not saying that it's not true. But if we look at Elvis's actions at this exact point in time, the point in time we're about to go over, he's about to get married, and then they're going to spend like 5 days, 4 or 5 days in Palm Springs. Now, Elvis owns a house in Palm Springs. But why does Elvis own a house in Palm Springs? Well, it's because the Colonel lives in Palm Springs, and the Colonel said, Elvis, I have this house in Palm Springs, and I love living down here. Maybe you want to come check it out. And Elvis went down and hung out with the Colonel at his house and decided he did like Palm Springs, and he wanted to live near the Colonel. So part of the myth is that the Colonel and Elvis didn't get along, that they didn't want to be around each other, that they didn't talk to each other. But at this point in time, Elvis has bought a house to be near to the Colonel. He's about to get married. As soon as he does, he's going to spend a few days in Palm Springs. Now, who do you think he spends those days with? Well, Priscilla is right there through all of it, because of course she's his new bride, and the Colonel. They're going to spend some time at the Colonel's house. So Elvis is choosing to spend his social time during this period with the Colonel. Is that all because of pressure? I don't know. We're going to take a deeper dive into this. And hopefully we'll all be able to make a better opinion at the end. But what we know for sure right now, because of the timeline, is that Elvis apparently voluntarily spends a lot of time with both Priscilla and the Colonel right at these moments. Colonel's also on set for like all of Clambake, apparently. He needs to be there to make sure everything's going to go okay. And now we're going to take a look at some pictures. And in the last episode, we pretty much said goodbye to Will Hutchins, who we can see here, Elvis's co-star in the movie. And he's having a discussion as part of the movie with Elvis here. This is a still, or I think this is a publicity shot that was taken on the set while they were filming the scene. Like between when they're actually filming, they would then kind of stand around and do some of these to be able to put onto movie posters and such. And Keith says that on the taped recording phone call with Red West to Elvis, he goes on to say about the wedding thing wasn't for him. He doesn't even know what was going on. Yeah, he does say that on that call. He absolutely does. But I think what he's referring to right there is the fact that he wasn't aware that Red himself wasn't going to be able to be in the room when Elvis was married. And we're going to get into that. It's all coming up right now. And Gunn is asking that only Elvis and Priscilla spent time with the Colonel, not the rest of the Mafia. Some of the Mafia did things for the Colonel, like, especially right at this period. Charlie Hodge is driving the Colonel around a lot, mostly back and forth to Las Vegas. And he's not exactly sure what's up, but this is the Colonel going in and arranging everything for the wedding. So Charlie does spend a fair amount of time with the Colonel alone because they're in this car together. Later on in the 70s, Sonny West spends time with the Colonel. Lamar Fike spends time with the Colonel. They tend to be on the advance team as they're setting up the concerts. At other periods of time, Colonel has close communications with other members of the Memphis Mafia, like Joe Esposito as foreman, especially at this moment in time. For some period of it, while Elvis had his concussion, Joe appeared to be reporting directly to the Colonel. But somebody was reporting to the Colonel every day, just as part of business. And right before this period, it was Marty Lacker. And so every day there's communications coming back and forth because these guys are doing some serious business. There's a lot of money being transacted back and forth. And the Colonel needs to know where Elvis is, and Elvis needs to know where the Colonel is. And they need to be able to contact each other at any moment. And that may sound kind of ridiculous, but we're going to come up to events in Elvis's life where he actually does need to contact the Colonel immediately. And they need to be in instant communication. And this is in a period when there's no such thing as instant communications. You can call across the country, but a long distance call takes a little time. And you got to hope that the person's at the telephone on the other end because they're not carrying their telephone number with them. It's at a distinct location. So they do have all these special communication setups, and somebody's running that all the time, and it's somebody on Elvis's end, and it's somebody on the Colonel's end. And so there's contact every day. But were the Memphis Mafia actually like sitting down and having dinner with the Colonel? Not dinner per se. They might have lunch with him. The Colonel was famous for his lunches, especially during the movie years, when he would apparently do some kind of weird barbecue thing in his office. So maybe we'll get to some stories of that someday. But I think maybe they could have... They definitely did eat with the Colonel from time to time. Socially at his home, I don't really think so. Did Elvis bring any of them socially into the Colonel's home? Maybe one or two at a time. But the Colonel wouldn't have wanted to be overwhelmed with the Memphis Mafia. And Elvis would have known that. So my feeling is it's really Elvis and Priscilla who are socializing with the Colonel and the Colonel's wife. And maybe a couple of people that the Colonel brings. But these would be the closest that Elvis would ever get to what we might think of as, you know, a simple neighborhood party or a Tupperware party. They're not selling Tupperware at any of these parties, but they're getting together socially to like do a barbecue in the backyard with just a few people. That's the kind of thing that Elvis and Priscilla do with the Colonel, not just during the honeymoon, but they will do that later. And Keith says that many people say that Elvis Presley was under the influence too during that call. Yeah, it's impossible to say, right? Because he could just be under the influence of great emotion. Here's one of his best friends in the world who is in the middle of driving a knife into his back, twisting it around because this man is not willing. He's doing this for money, but he's not willing to take money to stop. Says that he won't stop for anything. They're going to do it. Now, what could Elvis have promised that could have got the guy to stop if it wasn't money? I mean, he could have said, I'm not going to do the drugs anymore, but was it already too late by that point? How could they have stopped it? The bodyguards, I don't think, could have stopped it anymore. It had already gone too far, and they probably already collected the checks. Now, if they had sided with Elvis, I believe Elvis's legal people, they could have taken care of everything. But Red wasn't willing to do that on this call. He wasn't willing to make any amends to Elvis, or to call things off, or to make any kind of agreement, or to just take Elvis's money instead of these other people's. Wasn't willing to do that. They don't talk about it on the call, but that's why Elvis is calling. And Red knows that's why he's calling, and that's why they're taping it. And then, so here's his best friend and two of his other great friends. He knows they're listening to this call. Elvis isn't an idiot. And it's possible he's just so overwhelmed with the emotion, he can't even get the words out. And it doesn't sound like he's crying or anything, but he's just sitting there thinking, what can I say? What can I say? And he knows he's being taped. So, I don't know. I can't really say that he was drugged during that call. Now, he may have taken some medication to go to sleep. We know he did that. But we also know that some of the other medications he took for pain, which we know he had, at a great amount at that point, well, they could make you slur your words too. So I don't know that he was under the influence in a way that they're trying to say that he was under the influence. But I also don't know that he was under the influence at all. He could have just been greatly strained while talking to these three people, especially this one man. The man he trusted with his life on so many occasions, and the life of his child. And Linda says, these men betrayed him so horribly. I personally don't rely on what they say. We can't rely on what they say. We can't rely on what any of them say. Whether they love Elvis or not, we can't rely on what is being said. We can rely that there is emotional truth in what is being said, that they're telling us things that they want us to know, although they may be hiding some of those things or twisting them so we don't see them clearly. But they're communicating things to us. Hi, Louie. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And Keith says that Lamar said the Colonel used him as a good luck charm at the dice table in Vegas. Lamar says a lot of stuff. And to me, when Lamar talks about the Colonel gambling, Lamar's always the one gambling in these stories, and it's Lamar that's losing the money. So Lamar's stories are always suspect in some way, but we always know that Lamar's stories are exaggerated. That's what he was known for. He exaggerates stories. And Linda's saying, do we know that Elvis was aware of the recording? It's such a horrible thing for these men to do. Well, Elvis knew they were sticking him with a knife in the back, and I think he was a smart enough man to know that if he called people who were willing to do that to him, there's a pretty good chance they're going to record that call. And Elvis talks in very couched terms throughout, just like Red does. It's a very controlled conversation on both sides. And one day we'll go through it where we can actually listen to it, and then we can comment on it more fully. I'm talking about it out of my memory, and I haven't listened to it for a long time. But I think there's a million things going on in that call that virtually no one's ever written or talked about. And Keith says that they signed a deal with the devil. Well, they got 40 pieces of silver, and that's all they got. But 4 million pieces came in. At least 2 million, because they sold 2 million copies of the book by the time it was all done. But they didn't get that. They got their 40 pieces, and that's all they got. And a lifetime of having to think about it. And they suffered. But then they went on to make more money from talking about Elvis. But let's get back to clam bake. Here we can see a picture that I think a lot of you have never seen, and it's Elvis behind the camera. And this is on the filming of clam bake. So at some point he got behind the camera and he did something. Now, I don't know if he filmed a scene or he just looked to see what the scene was going to look like, or if he was just playing around and this is a publicity shot of some kind, but there he is. Hi, Jen. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And Gunn is asking if it was the secretly recorded conversation between Elvis and it was Red and Dave Hebler. Yeah, that's exactly what they're talking about, Gunn. And he's asking if I can do a segment about this call. The way that I prefer to do everything, Keith, is that we've got to come through this chronologically in some way. So it would need to be a piece of a larger part, like we would need to do like all of 1976, or a few months out of 1976 leading up to that, so that we have a better idea of what's actually happening. Now, that call, I think, happens later than that, but we would really need to start prior to the rupture, which is whatever happened that caused them to get terminated in the first place. We want to get far enough back that we can see that. And we may not know what it is, but we'll see it happen, because there will be ripples of it around the event. Like a black hole. We'll see the edges of it. We just won't know what's in it. And then we'll be able to link up, hey, that time is really what links to this period where they get terminated, and then they do these things, and then one of these things is this call. But otherwise, I think looking at this call by itself, I don't think you'd learn much out of it. I think it's sensational, and I think that's how the myth of Elvis continues to spread, by only looking at the sensational pieces themselves outside of the events that surround them. The same way that it's easy to take Elvis and pull one facet and pull it away from everything else and say, this is Elvis. Well, it's not Elvis. It's a piece of Elvis, but it's not Elvis. Now, this is the Italian poster for clam bake. Has a lot of the same artwork, but the Elvis artistic picture, it's an illustration. He's got a shirt on that says Bagnino. Not sure what that means. If any of you speak Italian and know what Bagnino means, let us know. Because the title itself is 3 words, and I can't pronounce the first word, but the last 2 words are Ma Bagnino, and that seems like a lot of words to make clam bake. So I'm assuming that the title is also slightly different. Something like Beach Party or something like that. But again, if you know Italian, let us know. And Gunn says that the call made her uncomfortable to listen to. Yes, it is. That is the call, Gunn. You have identified the exact one, because it is very uncomfortable to listen to. I thought you guys might have fun seeing this. This is a printer's plate for a newspaper. This is how they get the ad for clam bake into a newspaper, how they print it onto the paper. You got to have one of these things. And how do you make one of these? I have no idea. But they make them and then they use them to print the papers. And this was the one for clam bake. And this is a close-up of one of the little squares of clam bake. And you can see it looks just like what would appear in your newspaper. And here is a picture of Elvis and a picture of Shelley that's set up so that they can print them into the papers. And this is the back of the soundtrack album, which I think is, or maybe it's the front. I don't know. I think it's the back. But the other side is just one big picture of Elvis, which is, okay, but I think this is a better picture. Got this artwork of the clam. There's some people having fun around it. And then you got 4 pictures of Elvis. And then it also indicates that you're getting 5 bonus songs. And these, I believe, are songs that are not in the movie. Guitar Man. How Can You Lose What You Never Had? Well, that's in this movie. Big Boss Man. Singing Tree, and Just Call Me Lonesome. Hi, Pat. Thank you for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. Here we can see Shelley and Elvis. Elvis's hair is looking particularly good, I think, in this picture. But it's also a really good shot of his face. At least I think so. What do you guys think? Is this a good shot of Elvis's face? You can only see half of Shelley's face. And she's got this cute hairdo that she's doing through most of the movie, or a lot of it. And this is a picture of Will Hutchins as Sugarfoot. This was how Will got famous. He was on TV for a few years in the lead role of Sugarfoot. TV westerns, they were huge at the end of the 50s and into the 60s. People love to watch westerns, especially ones that lasted about a half hour. They'd watch them if they went up to an hour, but the half-hour ones, I think, were really popular. And Anna says that was a great picture of Elvis. And Linda Jewell says that she agrees Elvis looked very good. And here we can see Will Hutchins and his beautiful wife, Babs. And he credited Babs with turning his life around when he was at a very low point and sticking with him through all the hard times. Now, on April 5th, 1967, which is right in the middle of this 5-week period of filming, Double Trouble comes out. It's released nationally. This is a press ad for Double Trouble. So, not something that would have been like in a paper. This would have been in a publication that was for the industry in Hollywood. So, not for like the average consumer, but for a specialized audience. And then they would have done something, bought, they would have. I'm having a couple more issues on this end, guys. Hold on just a second. This equipment of mine is just been giving me fits the last few days, and I just can't seem to nail down the exact issue. All right. But Double Trouble's out. Elvis, it's been released nationally, but Elvis is still working on this other movie, Clambake. But the rest of the world, they're going to the cinema to see Elvis on the big screen. And this is the album that comes out to support the movie, the soundtrack. This is a still from the movie, or a publicity picture from the movie. So this would have been what Elvis was filming pretty much right before. Not immediately before, but not too long before he filmed Clambake. To me, he actually looks slightly heavier here, even though we can only see his face. And you can only see half his face. He looks slightly heavier than he does in Clambake. At least to me. What do you guys think? And Pat says that she loves the horses. Thanks, Pat. I put that on there to give us a feeling of the Circle G. And Gunn says that she liked Clambake much better as a movie. Here we can see the poster for Double Trouble. So all over the country, as Elvis films Clambake, this poster is appearing everywhere. And here's a picture of a smiling Elvis and his co-star from Double Trouble. And Elvis looks particularly happy here. He's smiling, laughing, like someone just told a joke. And he thought it was very funny. Now, if you bought the soundtrack album, you may have gotten a poster inside of it. And on the back of that poster, they printed this list of all the stuff that you could purchase about Elvis. So we've got a complete Stereo 8 catalog. I'm not sure what that is. I guess maybe it's a kind of an LP, ones that are redone in stereo. If you collect Elvis audio stuff, let us know. Elvis twin packs. I'm assuming that means you get two records in the same pack. And they're saying Frankie and Johnny and Something for Everybody, GI Blues and Elvis is Back, Blue Hawaii and Potluck, How Great Thou Art in His Hand in Mine. So I don't know if you're getting two separate albums, and they're not listing any prices or anything on here. This is more like letting you know these things are available and to go ask somebody at the record store. And if they don't have it, maybe they can order it for you. And then they've got his complete catalog of soundtrack albums, and then the standard catalog albums. And it's interesting that they don't have the standard catalog split in any way. The gospel ones are mixed right in with his rock and roll records. And Marion says that yes, Elvis's cheeks look a little heavier in the second picture. Right, I think he looks like he had more weight on him before he came to Clambake. And that makes you wonder, how big a rupture was it when he showed up and he was a little overweight? Was that completely unexpected? And Gunn says, it's always so nice to see Elvis smile, and that wonderful smile. And Anna agrees. He says there's a lot of people in the chat today. And that's good with me. I like to have a lot of people there. It keeps the chat flowing and the whole show going so much better. And we've had a great discussion today. Now, this is the picture that would have been on the front of the poster that we just saw the back of. The one that you would have got folded up in the album. And where it says, "My sincere thanks, Elvis Presley." That's printed onto the poster. And of course, this poster, I don't know how big it would have been. I don't know if it was like a one fold over and then slid into the album, or if it was four. So if you happen to have bought that album, or you collect these albums and you know how big this poster is, let us know. But a story that we heard Will Hutchins tell us is that on the last day at the cast party, Elvis gave me a huge picture of himself in a red shirt. He signed it, "Help us out, Will, Elvis." The picture was so big, I nailed it on the wall of my garage for all to see. I'm wondering if, because this movie, Double Trouble, was coming out while they were filming, if Elvis, as part of the promotional material, had some giant posters of himself in, now this is a red jacket, it's not a red shirt, but it is red, and it's coming out right at the same time period that Elvis is giving this gift to Will. So it seems like the most likely available picture that Elvis would have had of himself, especially in this giant size, unless he had it specially made. But Will's saying that, well, he says it's a picture. So I don't know if that's a poster, or if it's truly a giant blown up picture. But I think a giant blown up picture would have been a rare kind of thing to get. But like, it seems simple to us now. You go to Walmart or go online and you order it, and they'll send you a shower curtain with a picture on it. But back then, photo stuff was much more difficult. So I feel like he had this poster from this Double Trouble movie. and that he went ahead and signed it again somewhere on there, or maybe it didn't have this printed signature on there, and then he gave it to Will. Just guessing, but it just seems to line up so nicely. Keith is saying, what did Elvis write on this pic? And it's my sincere thanks, Elvis Presley. And it's pre-printed on there. That's what you're getting. If you buy his album, you're getting his sincere thanks on his poster. And Pat says that she loves this poster, or this photo. It's a pretty good photo. Got some really nice hair in it. He's looking straight at the camera. No smile or anything. It kind of looks like he's about to break into a smile, but he doesn't actually have a smile on in the picture. This is a picture of the making of Double Trouble. And Bud Hill Terrence Spencer says, I have the Double Trouble and Clam Bake records in my collection. Well, hello, Bud. I don't think I've ever seen you in here before, so welcome to the chat. Good to have you here. And that's interesting. So the Double Trouble record that you have, did it come with a poster? Or do you think it was supposed to come with a poster? Here's another picture from Double Trouble. And Bud says that he's new and he just stumbled into the room. Well, welcome. If you're an Elvis fan, I hope you like this channel. We're doing a lot of deep dives. And I've already got over 100 hours of live 1-hour documentaries. You just got to go under the live section on my channel, and you could choose from any of them. Each one's self-contained, but this one is part of a series about the Circle G, and this is part of a mini series about clam bake in the middle of the Circle G. And Bud says that his copy did not come with a poster. Marion says she'd love to have that poster picture. And Bud says he's a huge Elvis fan. Well, you're in the right place. I tell stories that I think most Elvis fans have never heard. Here's another still from the movie Double Trouble. I believe this guy on the left, and I don't know his name because we're not doing Double Trouble right now, so I didn't really do much research on this movie. But I believe that's the director. So again, I believe this is a behind the scenes photo, and they're practicing a scene or blocking it or getting the lighting set up correctly and using that as an opportunity to run through the lines. And he's giving them direction, which could be that he's looking for them to emote something different than what they're showing. But I think a lot of it, especially in an Elvis Presley movie, which was about speed, about making the movie quickly and doing everything on the first or second take, most of the direction is more about where to look and where to face so that the cameras all pick you up correctly if they're using a multiple camera setup, or if they're just using one camera to make sure you're in the right spot and that you hit the lighting in the right timing. And that the acting is really more up to each of the individual actors. And Gunn says that she didn't have a poster either. Yeah, I think it might. Now, I saw it on eBay, and they were listing it as a poster that came with the album. So I had a feeling like it only came with like the first year of the album that it was out or something. I don't really know, though. And here's another behind the scenes picture. And again, I believe the director is giving direction. Hi, Luann. Thank you so much for joining. And happy coffee. And Bud says, is it true that Double Trouble was filmed in June 1966 and Easy Come, Easy Go was filmed in September 1966? I was thinking it was Spin Out that was filmed in September 1966, but I'm not sure. We're really looking at the year 1967 in this particular series. So we've gotten really deep into 1967, and we've straggled into 1966 back to maybe late November, because that's when Elvis left from the last movie, which I was thinking was Spin Out. And he drove back to Memphis, and on the way, that's the trip where they asked George Cline to play Green, Green Grass of Home over and over on the radio. And he did. And then Elvis gave George Cline for Christmas a beautiful Cadillac. Beautiful Cadillac convertible, brand new. And he took George's old car, which was a brand newish 1966 Chevrolet convertible, only a year old. And of course, George took very nice, good care of his nice things. And Elvis gave that car to Gary Pepper. But that, we haven't really got into any of the movies back in 1966. Not a problem, Bud. Feel free to ask any question. I love to get all the questions you can ask into the comments and the chat. We'll figure it out somewhere along the way. We'll get it into a story. And Bud's asking, Clambake was filmed in March, April of 1967. That's a good question, Bud. It is very difficult to figure out exactly when Clambake was filmed, because Elvis had a concussion during the very beginning of it, and he'd already delayed it once. So it looks to us, as close as we can get, that Elvis filmed from the point he got out of the bed with the concussion, which would have been like, I think it's Monday the 12th. And they film through the 27th of April. Some people say that during part of that period, Elvis went back to the Circle G, but it looks to us, based on what Will Hutchins says, that it was a 5-week party, that Elvis never left, and that they wouldn't have been time for him to leave. They were already behind. So the short answer, Bud, is yes. Between like March 12th and April 27th, 1967. And Luann says that Elvis Presley movies make you feel like it's part of your teen era for years for some reason. Yes, they bring you back to your youth. And even if you didn't see them in your youth, you feel young watching them. Now, on April 12th, 1967, I've got a note, and it's unsubstantiated by anything. It's a note that was on a fan site that they got from somewhere else, but they didn't tell us where they got it. And it says that ironwork is added to Graceland's windows and doors. Now, I don't know what kind of ironwork they're talking about. I don't know if that's for security or if it was decor. But I thought I'd mention it since we're here. And if anybody knows what happened on April 12, 1967, with ironwork being added to Graceland, let us know. And we see Elvis and Gary Pepper on screen. Gary Pepper is Elvis's conduit to the fans. Gary writes stories for fanzines about Elvis. People who love Elvis, and the whole magazine is about Elvis. They don't get wide circulation in most cases. Go to really dedicated Elvis fans. But Gary supports them with these stories. Gary is very involved in Elvis's life. At one point, Gary will live next to Vernon Presley on Dolan Drive. But at this point in time, he doesn't, but he's still very close to Elvis. And the day Elvis left to go film Clambake, Gary and his mother were there at Graceland to see them off, and they stayed and spent time with Grandma Dodger. And one of the fanzines asked Gary, "Is Elvis married?" And Gary responded, "Not to my knowledge. I personally do not believe he is." And they asked him this like right during this period. Like while Elvis came out one of the fanzines while Elvis was filming Clambake. So it would have been asked like a month before, maybe 2. And in an interview published in January 1967, Elvis said, "Naturally, when you make a film, you get to know your co-star well. I've always a happy kind of hope that I'll find the right girl that way. You're both subjected to tension and strain in a film, and I'm always interested to see how we get along under it. Personally, I've liked them all, and we've nearly always dated, but it's never gone deep enough to want to marry. I guess I really am a bit lonesome. It looks as if I'll have to stay that way for a while. But I guess the right girl will come along. When she does, I'll know her right away. Maybe she'll be a star, or maybe she'll just be an ordinary girl in an ordinary job. I don't know." So that's published in an interview by Elvis in 1967, January 1967, which means Elvis gave that comment most likely prior to when he left Hollywood in November of 1966. So sometime mid-November or earlier, 1966. Now, at that moment in time, he had not asked Priscilla to marry him. So he was not engaged at the moment that he made these statements. But now they've come out, and they came out in January, right after he asked Priscilla to marry him. So I don't know if Priscilla ever saw these statements, but it indicates that he's been with Priscilla for many years. But this statement indicates that he has been dating his co-stars in every film. It also indicates that he views his co-stars as potential marrying material. Hasn't found any that way, but kind of thinks that he might. And we could look back a few years at Anne Margaret and say, could be where he has these ideas from. That he's always kind of had these ideas, and Anne Margaret got awful close. Although she seems to have soured him on the idea of marrying a co-star. At the same time, he said this sometime shortly before January 1967. That I look at each of the co-stars as a possible marriage potential, and I use this movie as a test to see how they're going to react to this tension and the strain, how they're going to react under pressure. Because nothing could be worse than marrying a woman who acts terrible under pressure, and then he'd be stuck like that for the rest of his life. But he also indicates that it's going to be a long time before he gets married. Now, the reality is, 6 months from the statement, he'll be married. Half a year from the time he makes this statement. Less than half a year from the time it gets published. And Gunn says that she feels Parker told Elvis to finally ask Priscilla. Now, on April 27th, 1967, Clam Bake filming ends. So they're all done with the filming. And Elvis is now able to move on with the rest of his life. And of course, there's going to be a wedding. And a wedding requires a bridal shower. And this is a picture from that bridal shower. And you can see Priscilla. And you can see Dee Presley, who is Vernon Presley's wife. That's Elvis's father. So this is Elvis's stepmother, Dee Presley. And Gunn is asking, Elvis almost found his girl in Anne Margaret. Well, that's the myth, Gunn. There's a very strong myth that Elvis and Anne Margaret were deeply in love and they were going to marry. And the story's kind of that Anne, she told some things to the press and that ended the whole thing. Yet they maintain these feelings towards each other for the rest of their lives. Now, how much of that is true and how much of that is the myth? That's something that we'd have to explore in a lot more detail. But they did have a very deep and very special relationship. But this is as far as we're going to be able to make it today because we are at the end of the hour. So we're going to go out on a song. And it's a song about getting back to the Circle G. We're going to play Threads and Dreams. And thank you all so much for spending this hour with me. And until we meet again, you all keep on taking care of business.
He wore a yellow shirt, black pants in the sun, rode horses through silence, then golf carts for fun. A ranch just 10 miles from the mansion's bright gate, where the myth met the morning and time learned to wait. George fixed the brickwork, the pipes in the ground, lit VP on shirt where no spotlight was found. Donna kept diaries, snapshots ahead of a father who labored, of a myth made by men. He didn't ask for gold, didn't dream of a crown, just a place to be still when the world spun around. In the hands of the quiet, in the stitch of a scene, he carried the weight of a half-finished dream. The holster was worn, leather was cracked, BP etched in thread, no glory attached. Mike shaped the saddle, the belt and the Lord, so Elvis could ride through a myth he adored. He didn't ask for gold, didn't dream of a crown, just a place singing still, that courage spun out. Feel the hang out the pride, the mistakes on the sea. We drained the weight of the hearts and his teeth. Snowstorms in March to fairgrounds at night. He chased peace in motion and shadow and light. And Priscilla saw him silhouette aglow, breathing in twilight was real.